Hi, I'm Deirdre Dixon Gilbert, your host of Malpractice Diaries, MD. We tell the secrets they keep. This story begins in Antioch, California. Jessie Marie Geyer, a 7-year-old, was rushed to the emergency room. She was crying out in pain, screaming, "It hurts." Every mother at one point in time has heard their child scream out for help. What happens when you can't help? What happens when everything goes wrong? The Jessie Marie Geyer story.
I felt so blessed with Jessie. I mean, she made me a mother. She was my firstborn.
She really cared about everybody.
And she gave the best hugs.
I read to her almost every night. Those are precious moments.
I guess I can wash my hands next.
When she woke up that morning, she had an extremely high fever, and she said she couldn't walk. The doctor looked at her and said, "Rush Jessie to the emergency right away. I'm afraid she's got a bacterial infection that could have gotten into her blood, and I need them to rule it out." And I said, okay, and I rushed her to the ER. They told me that Jessie's fine, that she just has a flu-like virus located in her knee.
When she got home, we just treated her like the doctors told us to treat her, like it was the flu.
And I tucked her in like I always do. I kissed her and I said, "I love you, sweetheart." 20 minutes later, Jessie called out my name. "Mommy." And her whole body was cold. And then within a minute, she started turning all these colors.
Carried her right into the ER, and I just said, you got to take a look at my daughter. She's very ill.
She was lying on the bed, naked with tubes all around her and a mask over her mouth. She just couldn't say anything. She just looked at me with her big eyes. I said, "I love you, Jessie, so much." We watched in horror as they tried to save her.
The ER doc looked up from Jessie and went like that.
But then someone said, "Time 1:21.
The doctor announced her time of death, 1:21 a.m.
She died. Jessie died.
They were ready to close the case with no cause of death.
Nobody was telling us anything. Not the next day or the next day.
We just kept pushing to try to get the answer.
The hospital didn't do a culture that would have revealed Jessie had group A strep, because that's what she ultimately died of. We knew, oh my God, this is medical malpractice.
You say, gee, I'm going to have to get a lawyer to find out, what went wrong medically here.
Well, the first time I heard it, I couldn't believe it. They said they couldn't take Jessie's case, not because it wasn't good, but because of this thing called MICRA. And the cap amount on wrongful death on a child is $250,000. And he said, "Michelle, all she needed was a blank antibiotic. I'm taking your case." It was a victory to get an attorney for my Jessie. I want to know what happened to Jessie. I want accountability. She shouldn't have died. She didn't even get a fighting chance. I miss putting her to bed at night and saying, Good night, sweet baby girl. I'll see you in the morning. I miss my Jessie.
Okay. Let's welcome Michelle Massey, mother of Jessie, author, and patient safety advocate. Hi,
Hi, Dee.
Michelle.
Hi.
How are
How you
you?
doing? I'm doing all right, I guess.
Good. Well, thank you for joining us today.
No problem.
Good, good. So let's begin with the story here. So let's talk about that day, Michelle. Exactly what went wrong?
Well, um, the night, the last normal day that I had with my children was October 28th, 2003. It was close to Halloween, and I was telling them about It's a Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. And Jessie was 7, and Jordan was 4, and Jameson was 3. So I made popcorn and we watched it. Everything was fine. No sniffles, no clue that something was going to go wrong. And after I put them to bed the next morning, my husband brought Jessie into our bed because she had a real high fever, and he gave her some Motrin. And so I needed to take her to the pediatrician when they opened, which was 8 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I did. I got there before they opened, and was seen right away. And Dr. Evans looked at her, didn't spend much time with her. He just kind of asked what happened, and I told her that she'd all of a sudden woke up with this fever and she couldn't walk. Her leg was hurting her. So he examined her, left the room, came back and said, Michelle, I want you to rush Jessie to John Muir Emergency right away. I want them to rule out septic knee. And he said it was very serious.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't even hesitate. I just picked her up and got them all into the car, 3 car seats, kids, and rushed to John Muir, which is about an hour from our house because it's supposedly a better hospital. And he told me that he had already called them and told them that we were on our way. So when we got there, I was expecting to be seen,
Mm-hmm.
but wasn't. We sat for hours waiting to be seen. Finally, the ER doctor, Dr. Slamoff, came in, and he looked at Jessie, tried to move her leg. She started to scream out, and he said, okay, I won't do that. And then he did it again. He did it like 3 times, and she was crying. And then he said, okay, we're going to do some x-rays. So they went and did the x-rays, and then we waited again in the room. And the whole time I was just kind of like trying to not let Jessie know that I was worried, because I didn't know what was going on. And I was just playing I Spy with her, trying to like keep her calm, and until we found out what was going on. Well, finally he comes back and he says, Michelle, the test came back negative for septic. She's just got a flu-like virus located in her knee.
Mm-hmm.
It should last 3 to 4 days. To treat her with Motrin for fever and pain, and then call your pediatrician in the morning and tell him what I told you. And I was relieved. I was like, thank you, Lord. I was like, oh gosh, so we left. I carried Jessie out of the ER. She never did walk. I carried her out of the ER to the car, put her in there, and called my husband, and we were grateful that it was just the flu. And that's how we were going to treat it.
When a doctor tells you that everything is okay, because I sort of went through your records and I know that the doctor initially said that there was nothing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Do you actually take him at his word? And would you have ever thought that the doctor would have not told you the truth?
Never. I had no idea. I believed the doctor completely. It never entered my mind to even question a doctor or a hospital or what they're doing. I completely had faith in them. And now, knowing everything I know that's not true, which is, it's unfortunate because the public still does not know that this kind of thing happens. And there's several reasons for that. And it's because of the laws that are in place. It's keeping us silent. The media doesn't cover it. They do a good job of covering this up.
So
and that's what I'm so grateful to you, Deirdre, for trying to do this show, because this is something that does happen. I mean, now this was 17 years ago for me, and now it's the third leading cause of death. So
here we go. And as you just stated, I know this is real hard for you. Did you think that the medical records were tampered with at the beginning of anything, or were they tampered with?
Now I do think so, yeah. In the beginning, no. I didn't know what to think. With Jessie, after she died, the cause of death, they said, was natural, and the cause was undetermined, which is very rare. If it does happen, it only happens like for babies or elderly people. It's just not a very common thing. And they wanted to close the case with no cause of death. I, deep down in my heart, knew something was wrong because of going to the ER 2 days earlier, and I believed that the doctor was telling me the truth. I did try to call the doctors, but nobody would talk to me. And this is important because people think that you just want to sue because you're sue happy, or most people want to find out what happened to their daughter or their son or their loved one, not because they want money, because you can't put a price tag on that. They want to know what happened so they can prevent it from happening to somebody else. That was my total reason for trying to find answers. It's like, what happened here? How can we prevent this from happening again? And I had no recourse. I first started to call an attorney, and they kept telling me, you don't have a case, first of all, because there's no cause of death. And with no cause of death, you don't even have a case, period. So I talked to the pathologist, and luckily she was helpful, and she said that what we could do is send samples to the CDC in Atlanta. And she told me that the chances are that they were not going to find it, and that if they did, it was going to take quite some time.
Okay.
However, it didn't take long at all. I got 3 weeks later, I got a call from the CDC, and they said they were sorry, that Jessie died from group A strep septic syndrome. Exactly what she was sent to the ER in the first place to rule out.
As you stated, and as many have stated, the attorney, were you able to get an attorney? And then when if you got an attorney, Did he stay on the case, or did he leave, or was your case successful?
No. I tried and tried and tried, and I kept getting turned down. But I'm pretty tenacious when I want to be, and I was able to talk to an attorney, and he looked at the medical records and he says, "Michelle, I'm going to take your case." So I felt that was a victory. The problem is as we got into it in depositions and stuff like that, what most people don't understand is when you're dealing with medical malpractice, you have to have an expert witness. There's all these rules. There's statute of limitations. You have to have an expert witness. There's a lot of things that goes into trying to prove medical malpractice if there is that case.
Right.
When MICRA, the tort reform law, was put in place 45 years ago, $250,000 was the cap amount, the most you can receive when it came to wrongful death of a child, an elderly, disabled, different people that just they're not wage earners.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, since they're not wage earners, by law, they're not considered worthy of their loved ones being able to hold them responsible. So that $250,000 is the most that they can win on a case. Now that's if they can win. To win a malpractice case is extremely hard. It is very hard to do.
So that's where I need to ask you something right there.
Okay.
250,000, that's exactly how much it is in Texas right now.
Yeah.
And you're saying that it was $250,000, what, 45 years ago?
Yes. It's
Wow.
never been adjusted for the cost of inflation.
Nothing.
It has stayed the same. Everything has gone up. Houses, gas, food. You can't think of anything that cost the same back in 1975. So now, if you have to get an expert witness, which can cost anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000, depending on your case, that's half the money right there. And an attorney doesn't get paid if they take it on contingency, which is what they do, and it's a civil matter. They need to get their lost wages, but if they're going to spend all the money that they have available to them, which is only the $250,000 to put on a case. I mean, it costs a lot. You have depositions, you've got court costs,
Mm-hmm.
expert witnesses. All of this stuff costs money. So attorneys now can't take cases when it comes to wrongful death or other cases where somebody's been maimed and they've lost their limbs, or there's just a lot of the window there for doctors to get away with. I'll just come right out and say it: murder, surgical assault, sexual assault. Addiction runs high with doctors because they have access to drugs.
Drugs, right.
And there's a lot of areas where people are being killed and tossed aside like crap. That's what makes me so upset, because it's like, my daughter, group A strep, that's something that's so common and treatable. And they had Jessie right there. They could have done their job, but they didn't. And
Mm-hmm.
instead, they just sent her home so we could watch her die. I mean, who does that? And legally, I wasn't able to do anything about it. I mean, legally, this is okay in America.
And you're talking about 45 years ago. So I understand as well that you had received an award, you were on the news, you were a strong advocate for the micro law and fighting against that. Did that help in any way?
You would have think it would have, but it didn't. It's almost like so when Jessie's case first started, it went on the front page of the Contra Costa Times because they didn't know what she died of. And that was like on the front page, like, wow, mysterious death. What's going on? Then as it unfolded, and we found out the hospital and the doctor was responsible, it started getting picked up. And then I got it on ABC 7 News. The thing is, I wanted to focus on not just what happened to Jessie, but this law that I feel like I was caught in a Twilight Zone movie. I just still can't believe that this exists and that people don't know about it, that the public just doesn't know. And so I was very, very aggressive. I went down, I met with the president of the California Medical Association. I met with him. Then I went over to the governor's office and I just walked right up there and I said, I need to talk to somebody about the death of my daughter. And they let me in. And I got Maria Shriver's personal email. And I wrote her, but it didn't to no avail. And then I was asked to represent California, the Center for Justice and Democracy back in 2005 was asking 2 victims from every state with like tort reform to share their story. And they asked me to lobby Washington, D.C. and share my story. And so I did. And then after that, I won the Consumer Advocate of the Year Award from the Consumer Attorneys of California, which is basically known as the Aaron Brockovich Award. And it was for my efforts on trying to amend MICRA, because I was able to get Senator Tom Torlakson to come to my house. I figured out, I got to his wife and she had heard, she heard the story. She goes,
smart.
Yeah, she goes, I said, this is Michelle Massey. You don't know. She goes, oh my God, are you the one? And I go, yeah. She goes, you want to talk to my husband, don't you? And I said, yeah, I do. And she goes, okay. And that guy, he was such a sweetheart. He came over to my house, sat in my living room. I showed him the medical records, explained to him what happened. And then he said, I'm going to go ahead and propose a bill to amend MICRA. It hasn't been done since, by the way. The only time they try to do it is with signatures, which they're trying to do this year. It's called FIPA, Fairness for Injured Patients Act. But he soon met up with what I call the medical mafia, which is the medical, pharmaceutical, and the insurance industry. And they have so much money. And this is where it gets kind of complicated, because the propaganda that they spend for any time that an issue like this comes up for amendment or possibly changing it, they want to tell you, this is what they tell you, and it hasn't changed. If you go back and you look at history, it's the same thing. They say, number one, oh, this law is so great because it's going to lower healthcare costs. It's going to lower premiums for doctors, their insurance premiums for doctors. And there's some other things that they say, oh, this is going to be great. Insurance premiums for doctors did not lower after MICRA was put in place. It was for 13 years straight. The insurance premiums for doctors continued to rise until Prop 103 was put in place, which was an insurance reform initiative. That's when rates stabilized for doctors. So there was that issue, and you can prove it. I'm sorry.
And that's okay. So what we want to do now is we just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. We know that it's very hard to go over these stories, to relive the story. If you don't mind, One more thing before we go.
Uh-huh.
Tell us a little bit about the book that you wrote, because you are an author and you wrote that book. What's the name of your book, and what was this book about, briefly?
The book is called Like Shattered Glass. And what happened was, after Jessie died, I had to write. I would go to my computer, and for some reason it would come out in poetry. And it was about the grieving process and about how our life was and how I was, what I was going through, what my kids were going through. I mean, poor my son Jordan, he's autistic, and he turned 5 the day after we buried Jessie. And it was like a couple of weeks after she died. They used to take baths together, and he started to scream and flail and kick, and I ran upstairs, and he was just screaming, "Mommy, I want Jessie back. I want her back now. You bring her back." And he was so upset, and all I could do was hold him. And it's poems like that I wrote about what we went through. And yeah, it's just a diary, basically. 2 years. I wrote every day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. I'd write a poem, but I wrote every day, and it's all documented. And it's just basically about the death and then the aftermath of what happened.
Wow.
It destroyed our family. I just want to add one other thing, is that I'm on disability now, and the taxpayers are paying for that instead of the insurance companies. I mean, we buy insurance just in case something's going to happen. That's the whole purpose of buying insurance. But the problem is, the insurance companies that are covering these doctors, they rather spend money instead of improving on the errors that are happening and putting the money towards that so there's less errors. They rather spend the money to pay these high-priced attorneys to defend the negligent doctor. So it's insane. They rather defend the negligent doctor instead of maybe offering the family some kind of explanation of what happened, and then maybe some compensation to help with medical bills, grief counseling, everything that you have to go through when you lose a child. And yeah, that's just another facet of the whole story that I think needs to be told. And, hopefully someday it will be.
Yes. Well, thanks again, Michelle, for tuning in. And,
no problem.
And again, thank you for your great work, and continue fighting, and continues writing books and stumping the pavement. And as you always have been, you are an advocate for patient safety. And we want to say thank you for joining us today.
Well, you're welcome, Deirdre.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to Malpractice Diaries, MD. We tell the stories they keep. Please make sure that you tune in next week, same time, same station, same Facebook page, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we look forward to seeing you next week. See you soon.